Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, our streetwise and intellectual gang members are Nonie Darwish, the author of The Devil We Don't Know, and also a modern-day freedom fighter. We have Jacqueline Brandwynne, a business strategist who comes from Switzerland originally, and she's here to give us some warnings. And Susanne Reyto, the author of Pursuit of Freedom, and she is from Hungary, with some warnings as well. Ladies, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
Is it very exciting to be on the Glazov Gang?
It is
Always.
always exciting and stimulating.
Ladies, the reason I am referring to the warning is this is a special show because each of you have a warning for our audience and for the world. Nonie, you are from Egypt. Jackie, you are from Switzerland, and Susanne, you are from Hungary, and each of you have a story to tell, and your background especially has made you frightened in terms of what an Obama re-election means for the world and for the United States. So that's why we're gathered here today. Susanne, let us begin with you. Tell us why you're very concerned, if we can use that word, about an Obama victory in the upcoming election, and why your background especially makes this such a dire predicament for you.
I have been concerned ever since 5 days before the last election, when the now president said, in 5 days we will fundamentally transform this country. And unfortunately, knowing his background, living under socialist, Marxist mentors, I knew that much of what we had experienced in Hungary is ahead of us. So what I foresaw then, we have lived for the last 4 years, and I can only imagine what, God forbid, the next 4 years would bring.
Susanne, I feel uncomfortable and almost inappropriate asking you to briefly discuss some of the horrifying and horrible things you've been through. But can you very briefly let at least our audience know some of the things you endured under communism in Hungary?
Well, it started under communism when I was only 5 years old. My parents attempted to escape, and we were caught, and we were imprisoned as a 5-year-old. Spent 3 months in prison myself, my parents for a year. And when we were reunited, only 5 months later, we went through a similar experience, and we were encamped in a communist internment camp. And it's not like a locked facility, but we were in more or less a locked facility because it was 10 miles from anything. You couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't do anything, and unfortunately we had to fend for ourselves when it came to food and any of our resources. No schooling, no nothing. And of course, every day they wanted to punish us as much as they could for my parents' attempt to leave Hungary. And when we finally were given an amnesty after Stalin died, it didn't get any easier, but under communism we adjusted to life because we had no choice. And that's one of the reasons why when we finally, under difficult conditions, we were able to leave, we came to this great country. The United States is probably the greatest country on earth. And although we may have needed to tweak it somewhat, we certainly didn't need to transform it.
Jacqueline, and my heart goes out to you because what my parents suffered in the Soviet Union and stood up against the evil empire, we struggled with the same evil empire. Susanne, when my parents look at Obama, because they've encountered the evil of communism, my mother, for instance, today, she can smell the same virus in Obama. Would it be fair to say that you can smell and see the same virus as well?
Absolutely, and any commentary that comes across immediately is a warning sign of what is to come, because we not only know what it is, but we've already lived the consequences.
Right.
And the redistribution of wealth. And unfortunately, our president not only wants to redistribute wealth within this country, but redistribute wealth amongst nations around the world. And where would the world be if the United States wouldn't be the exceptional country that it is?
Absolutely. And how do we create wealth? Through free enterprise. This is the thing that socialists never get. They want to redistribute the wealth, but socialism can't produce it. Jackie, you don't come from a communist country or from an Islamic country, But coming from Switzerland, you also fell in love with the United States and have some of the same concerns, but from a different perspective. Share your story with us.
Well, Switzerland is a tiny country, and it's a wonderful country. I love it, but it is very small. And in the 60s, women had absolutely no chance to get any position of any significance. And when I was a teenager, I listened to a program from America. Every single Monday I was glued to the set, because what I learned about the dynamics of the market, about the openness, about the thriving economy, it was very clear to me, even at 14 years of age, that that is where I was going to live. And when I was 18, I applied for a visa at the consulate without my parents knowing it. And when I was 20 and came of age, I got the long-awaited visa and bought myself a one-way ticket to America. When I came here and I landed in New York, it was extraordinary. You could feel the excitement. Everybody was striving to make it. Companies were springing up left and right like mushrooms after the rain. There was such an enthusiasm, them pulling together. Their people, rich and poor, were one. In fact, you know, the ones who hadn't made it looked at the ones who did, who reached success and got money, and they said, if they can do it, we can. It was just an electrifying, wonderful atmosphere, and you could sense the pulse of this nation going forward. It being free, it being open, it being ready to accept new ideas and new people. And it didn't matter whether the people were born in America or whether they were immigrants. People gave you a chance in this country. They wanted you to succeed, and so we did. And my career started to blossom. My very first job, I was invited to be a babysitter at a publisher's home by chance. And I, for the first time, saw a television set. For the first time, I saw an advertisement. And when I looked at the stories of how people, you know, through goods, through services and goods, could change their life, I was intoxicated. I said, I can do that. And so eventually I became a marketer, and then a business owner, and then a strategist for major corporations and also for the government. I served in both Democratic and Republican administrations. I was an advisor to the Economic Council. I was a negotiator for the GATT for America, and I was so proud that I could give back something to this country who has given me a wonderful life and a wonderful career.
And Jackie, and so therefore, America under Barack Obama is going in the same direction, and you're very excited, correct?
Well, I would say I'm extremely worried and concerned, because I lived in Europe. I saw how these countries with their socialist agendas went down, pensions plans, everybody was giving away everything, but they couldn't pay for it. And the result of this misery, of these completely misunderstood strategies, is evident everywhere today. Look at Greece, look at Spain, look at France, where over 60% of the people are on government jobs. It is catastrophe.
Right.
And we are sliding down the same slippery slope. And we have only this very administration to thank for. And if we don't turn it around, it is an untenable situation. Our debt is too high, our economy is weak, and if you listen to businessmen all around this country and economists, they will tell you that they're fearing that we're sliding into another recession.
And you know what you're talking about, because you have actually overturned companies that were failing and led them to success.
Yes, I have.
And you can see, as a businesswoman and as a business strategist, the failure of what Obama's doing.
Oh, it is. My sense is that even if I give him the doubt, you know, and give him the belief that maybe he wanted to do the things he said. But he's not able to do them. He didn't deliver.
Okay.
And my deep sense is that he simply doesn't understand how the private sector works.
Right. Now, and I appreciate that. Where we would disagree is I think that he's got destructive intent in his heart, but that's another debate. Before we go to Nonie, you've worked with some American presidents, Jackie?
Yes, I have.
Just very briefly, what presidents have you worked with?
I worked with Ronald Reagan. I worked in the Bush administration. I worked in the Clinton administration. And I even worked in the Carter administration.
Wow. Who was the best president?
Reagan, by far.
Okay. You know what? You're coming back on my show every week because I love Ronald Reagan.
He was fantastic.
Thank you so much. And we're going to move on to Nonie Darwish. Nonie, when we hear about Jackie coming to coming from Switzerland to the United States, and when Susanne came, everybody can kind of see that anybody can make it. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. And my family experienced that as well. You come from a country where till this day, if you're poor in the street, a rich person can come out and slap you in the face, and it's normal. And yet the world is anti-American rather than focusing on these brutal dictatorships and unequal societies. Nonie, share your story with us a bit, and somewhere where these ladies' stories resonated something in you.
Yeah, well, I come from a background of experimentation with both socialism and Islam. It's an Islamic country, Egypt. And so I lived under Sharia, and I lived under an experiment as a child and a teenager with Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt when he wanted to bring socialism. And actually socialism and even communist ideology can survive a little bit in the Muslim world because they are very similar in their, they want a totalitarian, they want to control the individual. That's the main objective of Islam and socialism. And they want dependency. All Muslim countries are very dependent. I used to work for the government when I finished college, and very little hope for me really to be anything. And if you're not born into a rich family, then your prospects are very dim. Even if you have a rich family, still your life is very restricted in a Muslim country. What you can do, what you cannot do. When I had a chance to come to America, I took it right away, and I moved to this country in 78, 79, and just my life completely, I'm just so grateful. I've been saved by America because the situation in the Muslim world now is getting from bad to worse. I can just imagine myself living in a Muslim country now, and what I was going to be, what my daughters are going to be. It's just very sad. What's happening today, I'm in contact with some women and some young men. And what I'm hearing is just totally very, very, very sad.
And Nonie, part of the sad story is that we mentioned Ronald Reagan earlier, and why Reagan gave my family so much hope was because the dissidents that were suffering in prisons in the Soviet Union and the imprisoned Russian people under that slave system, Ronald Reagan stood as a symbol and said, "We will rescue you." But what is Barack Obama's message to those imprisoned under Sharia?
Well, as a matter of fact, Obama is catering to the Sharia lovers. When he came to Egypt, he spoke about, he practically apologized, and I monitor Arab TV, and I saw some ads and commercials. And the President of the United States came to apologize to us. So when he was saying in the debate that I never went to apologize, that's not what the Muslim world they are saying it openly.
Right.
That Obama came to apologize to us. For what? I'm not sure for what.
Absolutely.
But
and he had
they actually believe he came
and he
to
had the
apologize.
Muslim Brotherhood in the front 2 rows in that speech in Cairo.
Absolutely. So he
what
was
a disgrace.
Catering for the, he was catering for the Sharia lovers, and Islamic,
I think
the
we-
Islamic ideology.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our second segment, but we've got about 2 minutes left. Briefly, from each guest, your final thoughts on this issue.
I think it's most important to be strong, to understand that you can only fight the Islamic countries from strength. And like Ronald Reagan, he was strong and he was willing to stand up for his conviction, and he had a backbone. When we are kind, our image is a weakness. And I think we have to understand the people we're dealing with. It's not possible to transcend and transmit our way of life to another culture. Mm-hmm. We have to know how they operate, and we have to know what would fit into their way of life. And then come to work together and compromise and make some agreement. But just to impose our way is totally ineffective. And in our culture, when we're kind and we're helpful, we think we're expressing kindness to everybody. But in the Muslim world, unfortunately, that spells weakness.
Yeah, and it's Jackie, what are some of your thoughts hearing?
Well, my thoughts are simply this, that Obama doesn't understand how to build an economy. He doesn't really understand what a free market economy is all about. Government cannot create jobs. Government can help you get to infrastructure. Government can build roads, help you rate roads. Government has functions and has a place, definitely. But it is private enterprise that makes a country thrive, that builds a country, that creates jobs, that creates opportunities. And if we don't have private enterprise to hum and to create profits, where are the taxes going to be? There's no tax base. If private enterprise cannot create this kind of results, there is no way to pay taxes. And that is what most people don't understand. It's not an issue of rich and poor, and companies have to compete on a global basis. And if that can't happen in this country, we are going to walk into a very dire future.
Nonie Darwish, final brief thoughts of wisdom from you before we go to our second segment.
I believe that it's not ignorance that Obama is doing and his supporters. I think there is a different view of how their image, what they see the future for America, they want to really change it. They don't want capitalism. I think these people want to slow the economy on purpose. They don't want America to be a superpower, and they want us to be just like everybody else. And they don't understand, of course, that if we leave a vacuum in the world, this is going to be filled. Human nature always will come to grab a vacuum. Yeah. And the vacuum is going to be an evil. It could be Islamism or communism, one of the two. And it's either American free capitalist system, that the vacuum is going to, we are now, that vacuum is filled by us. But if we retreat, the vacuum is going to be filled either by Islamism or communism.
Yeah, we always have to fight every moment for our freedom, and that's what we learn from the history of the world. Join us tomorrow night when we have the same guests back, the same freedom fighters back. We'll be discussing the events of the week, including all the troubling things we're finding out about Benghazi and when the president knew, what the president knew, and when he knew it. Join us then.